People are trapped by their own ideas of what they believe is possible. I see this so many times. It's like the first person that ever ran the 4-minute mile, they believed it was possible, even though everybody else thought it was completely impossible. And so that lack of belief that something is possible keeps people from even trying. So a lot of people that don't have open minds and they're very rigid in their way of thinking, their own life is very rigid for that exact purpose. Because the confines of their own life is constructed by their mind and what they believe. And so a lot of people construct these mental prisons. And so they're not even aware that they're inside this mental prison because it's all just programming. Oh, I was always told it was this way. I was always told we do it this way. I was always told that this is the limit. I was always told that you can't do it like this, you have to do it like that. And so this is something I see so much, and it keeps people in a low space, in a low vibration, where their reality is just dictated by thoughts in their head that aren't even theirs. And so a lot of people just have these thoughts and beliefs, and they don't even realize that it's not theirs. And so when I was first starting on this journey, I was complicated by a lot of these beliefs. Like we're raised, especially in the United States, it's like you grow up, you get married, you have 2.5 kids, you have the white picket fence, you have a job, and you just work for 40 years, you have a 401k. This is just programmed beliefs. And so when somebody goes against that, people are like, what are you doing? Because their own idea of what's possible and what's true is formed based on that belief that was formed from programming, from growing up. You have to do it like this. You have to be a certain way. You have to look a certain way. You have to do certain things. And so when you live life under that aspect, it keeps you limited. And so this kind of reminds me of the experiment they did with fleas. And so what they did with fleas was they put them in a cup. And so when they put them in a cup, it caused them to have a ceiling on the height at which they could jump. And so when they removed the cup, the fleas could only jump to that specific height. But for fleas that weren't put in that cup, they could jump 3, 4, 5 times higher. And so we're a product of what our beliefs are and what our environment is. And so these beliefs are invisible limits. And so we've been put in this container growing up that we can only jump so high, that we can only do this a certain way. And so it's limits like that and beliefs that are invisible that people don't see, that they're limited by. And that keeps them imprisoned because they don't even know they're there. They operate on a daily basis, a routine, do things the same way, and they refrain from trying things a certain way because they're told that it's not correct or it's not possible. And so this is something I see a lot with the people that I help with mental or physical conditions. And a lot of people tell me, it's not possible to become free of this. Just because in your belief system it's not possible to become free of something doesn't mean it's not true. Because a long time, I thought ADHD was permanent. I thought depression was permanent. I thought anxiety was permanent. I thought the pain that I had was permanent because I dealt with it for over 15 years. And so a lot of people just continue on living a certain way under the guise that certain things are possible and other things aren't. But in reality, the things that are truly possible are to those that have their mind open and that are willing to try. Just like the person that ran the 4-minute mile. He didn't know if it was possible or not, but he wanted to try. And so he broke that 4-minute mile record. And so the key is we have to step back, look at our own life, and realize where we're limited. What's holding us back? What are we told that we have to do a certain way that's limiting us in such a manner that if we did it through another avenue, it would make things so much easier. And so like the thing that I say all the time, if you're struggling or suffering to overcome or solve a specific problem, there's another move that you can make, just like much of chess. You can make a chess move that would make the whole game easier. And so the same thing is with life. There's a move and an action that you can take that'll make your situation immediately easier. But the key is, if you don't believe that move is possible, you're just going to sit and be stuck, suffering. And you're going to end up moving through the world through these belief systems that are disempowering. Because a lot of the belief systems are hyper disempowering on what people believe is actually possible. And so it really takes a look at our own lives. And so a lot of people aren't willing to take this look at their own lives, because this is something I see all the time, especially on LinkedIn. You know, I get a lot of hate on LinkedIn because a lot of people take these pre-programmed beliefs and they project it onto what I'm doing. You know, science and studies tell you, Austin, you can't get rid of ADHD. You can't overcome it. You know, all these different types of things. And in actuality is, you know, my own case in point with my own life, my lived experience. And the various people I've helped overcome it as well, get off medication. And so there's a variety of things that are just like that, where people like, you know, I don't really think that's possible. I'm not going to try. I don't think I can be free of this pain. I don't think I can be free of this burden. I don't think I can be free of this disease or this condition. And they just continue down the same line. And they continue to suffer because of that. Because they view the world from the lens in which they've been taught. And so, in order to get something new, you have to throw away something old. You know, it's like when you let go of who you truly are and what you think you are, you can step into something new. Because who you are is just a set of beliefs and ideas. And so, if you disregard those ideas and those beliefs and you pick up new ones, it's going to make you into a completely different person. And so the idea is to always continue questioning your strongest held beliefs. Because if you question your strongest held beliefs, a lot of the times we keep those due to inherent biases. And so for the longest period of time, one of my strongest held beliefs was what I believed was possible about the body. And this was about 5-6 years back when I started fasting. Because a lot of the science said back then about fasting is if you fast, you'll burn muscle first. And so all the studies started to say these types of things. And so what I actually wanted to do is test it for myself. And so I went 60 hours without food or water, and then I worked out twice. And then I found out after the 60 hours, I actually became stronger. My shirt was a little bit tighter around my lats because I did a bunch of pull-ups. And so I'm like, how am I getting stronger after not having food? Yet all these studies say it's not possible. You lose muscle first, and then you lose fat. Whereas the contrary, I lost fat. And so there's all these different types of ideas, all these different types of situations where people get bogged down into. And so a lot of people just conform to these beliefs because they see everybody in front of them doing it as well. So there's this interesting experiment that was done in the 1950s called the Asher Conformity Experiment. And so it's a fascinating experiment. And so they had 18 people. And so one person wasn't a part of the experiment. They didn't know what was happening. And the other 17 people were in on the experiment. And so what they had was a sheet of paper, and they had a circle on it. And it was a blue circle. And so the 17 people that were part of the experiment, they asked each individual person before that final person, what color was the shape? And everyone said red. And so when it got to that final person, even though their own eyes told them it wasn't red, 66% of the time, that one lone person would conform to the other people. And so that tells you something a little bit about society, is that we follow a lot of times unconditionally because everybody else is doing it, or it's always been said, it's been done this way. And so it's something that's super key to realize is when everybody is around you and they have certain beliefs, those beliefs start to rub off on you. And you notice why cultures all around the world, they have different belief systems and they have different customs and different ways that they do things, and they conform to those beliefs. And not to necessarily say those customary beliefs are bad or good, but we're a product of our environment. We're a product of our programming. We're a product of our beliefs. So a lot of people aren't even aware of what's truly possible, because most of our beliefs and our actions come from our subconscious mind. And so 95% of those actions are unconscious that we do throughout the day. And so if you find yourself consistently bumping up against walls, struggling, suffering, just know it's one of your beliefs. And so a lot of times it's our strongest held beliefs, but it takes courage to face those. And so if we truly face those and we can admit to ourselves, you know, this belief isn't true and I believed it, you know, it's showing that we're much stronger than our programming. Even though it sucks. I've had so many times where I've lived and I've talked about things, but they were false, but I believed they were true. Because a belief is accepting something as true without examining it. And so you really have to become your own scientist. And so you perform experiments on your own beliefs. And you start to see and test it firsthand. Not just believing it because somebody told you, not just believing it because I told you, not but believing it because, you know, you saw it on the news or whatever it is. By verifying it, if you can, firsthand. And so that's the key of all this. Our strongest held beliefs most likely aren't real, or they're not conscious. And pretty much most of us aren't aware if we really have a false belief until we become conscious of it. And then once we become conscious of it, we can decide what we want to do with that belief. We can decide if we want to keep taking that action from that frame of reference of that belief. And so that's it, guys. And so analyze, look at your own beliefs, and you'll probably find something that isn't true. And when you let go of those beliefs, they're like burdens because they hold you back from your true potential. We're limitless as human beings in our own potential. And I want you to know that. I hope you have a blessed day, and I hope a miracle comes and finds you this week.